from talking for 17 years. So let's just see if I can get them. I'm Shamra. I'm the executive director for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Thank you so much for having me here again today. I love being a part of these programs, and I'll be here to talk a lot more in December on the 4th, and I hope that you'll join me. I did want to include the name of our programs manager. I'm hoping she's out there with you guys on the call today. She's our programs manager for the New Hampshire and Maine chapters. It's just the two of us. I am with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and our mission is to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide. This month is World Suicide Prevention Month, and it's a great opportunity for you to finish out the week by being a part of this presentation with Shannon and really thinking about how you can make mental health and suicide prevention a priority in your organizations. Our theme for this year's World Suicide Prevention Month was Talk Away the Dark. You can visit afsp.org/Talk Away the Dark for resources on how to have an open, honest conversation about mental health with your employees, your family members, your friends, and more. There are ways that AFSP can help you to support suicide prevention in the workplace. We have a variety of education programs. Again, you can get a peek at that program at the December 4th roundtable. Along with that, we have some additional resources that will accompany that. We have programs for not only mental health and being able to have a conversation with somebody who might be struggling, but also programs if you have somebody in your life who has made a suicide attempt and survived, really how to be able to support them and navigate that kind of healing journey. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention also has an amazing plethora of suicide prevention resources. We raise money in our chapters to invest in our communities. So no matter what your state you're calling from today, you can contact your local chapter, ask for any of these suicide prevention resources and more, and your chapter will purchase those for you, mail them directly to you so that you can have them available to you and your staff. We also have a series of posters. So I know you all have your OSHA posters up on the walls in your break rooms, and you can add these warning signs and self-care strategies, as well as suicide prevention resources to your walls as well. We also have a series of flyers that will help you navigate the difficult conversations around mental health. And to access these resources or to get more involved in suicide prevention efforts, whether it's a walkathon, hosting your own event, having an education program, you can find your local chapter at the link here on the screen. Thank you so much for joining me and Shannon and everybody at OSHA today. Again, I appreciate being here, and I'm just so pleased to, hopefully, I'm just going to pass it right over to Shannon Prescott from the Richards Group. I've seen her present before, and I'm so excited to have this opportunity to be here again. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen, and then I need to find my, okay, I got it. Good morning. Thank you so much. So, Shamir is going to do another great presentation in December, so I highly, highly recommend that if you can get there in person, please try to attend. If not, hop online to see that, because what I'm talking about today is also suicide prevention. When we talk about supporting mental health in the workplace, is moving forward with preventing a potential suicide by supporting somebody early on. So some of you may have joined us back in January when I did a similar presentation, and maybe you've seen me do this before in other places, because this is a very, very hot topic. It is something I get called in to do a lot, along with some other trainings and things that we offer in support of mental health in the workplace. So I am going to share some of the same slides and stats that we talked about in January, but I actually have new ones, believe it or not. It's only a few months later, and we have new statistics around this about how this is affecting workplaces, our communities, everywhere, right? So mental health follows us wherever we go, and that's the reality. And so we really do need to be paying attention to it. And also because, as you'll see in here, there's also some agencies like OSHA that are paying attention to it as well and putting it in our forefront to say, hey, this is becoming a hazard. We need to pay attention to this. So my job, my normal job, I work for the Richards Group. I'm a certified work comp advisor, and I'm a certified occupational safety specialist through the National Safety Council. I'm a first aid CPR AED trainer. I teach mental health first aid. I'm an OSHA outreach trainer for construction and general industry. I do a lot of trainings. I do a lot of work in-house with clients in the construction industry, manufacturing, all different types of industries. And what I can say is we are definitely having an issue with mental health support in every single employer I walk into. It is a constant in HR offices at this point. We are battling new disabilities like anxiety becoming a leading cause of disability in the workplace now. And so I just feel this is a really important topic for us to be really talking about at leadership levels, and then bringing it down to our frontline employees as well, and making sure that they are supporting each other and know what to look for. So I'm going to give you some stats on why this is important, because if you've ever sat through a training with me, you know that education is really important to me, and understanding the why behind why we're putting this at the forefront and saying we need to do something is also really important to help get you on board with us in preventing potential deaths and suicides and substance use issues. So before we begin, and as you know, Shamira was already speaking a little bit about this topic and different events that are coming up and resources for you, we are going to be talking about suicide. We're going to be talking about mental health, and so there could be some tough subjects that we touch on. So I just urge you to take self-care. If you need to step away, and if something gets to be too much, please do so. And always feel free to reach out to me after if you want to talk a little bit more. So we're here, number one, because mental health matters. We have to start thinking about this within the workplace. One of my questions that I always ask in these classes is, if your brain was physically damaged, if you had a brain tumor, would you treat it? If you had a concussion, if somebody got hit in the head at work and we had a concussion or a skull fracture, do we have plans around that? We know how to treat that. But why do we shy away when the brain is showing emotions, when the brain is doing what it's supposed to do? The brain does a lot of things. It runs our physical functions, but it also runs our emotional functions. And we have to pay attention to those as well, because they do absolutely affect our safety and our day-to-day. It also will affect your work comp claims. And I'm actually going to show you a client case study of mine where we had a mental health challenge with an employee who was getting frequently injured. And there's studies out there as well. Marsh Risk did a huge study on this. So we have data that shows when we are struggling with our mental health, sometimes with, even small stresses, we are not going to be as focused onto our day-to-day. And if you're doing a physical job or a dangerous job and you're not able to focus on what you're doing, that's very dangerous for you and everyone around you. And from a business perspective, because I am a work comp advisor, if you are having work comp injuries increase because there are stresses and mental health issues going on in your workplace that we're not addressing, and it's causing distractions and complacencies and incidents, that's going to affect your mod rate. And some of you, your mod rate is very important when you go out for bids on jobs as well. People look at these things. It's about looking to see if you're still insurable from your work comp company. If they see a lot of frequency issues, they're not necessarily going to want to renew your policy. And it could be something as simple as, providing some more mental health support in the workplace. Ultimately, this is going to help cut costs if we can invest into this area of safety. So this is actually a video from the Department of Labor around mental health that I wanted to share with you all.
The Department of Labor has launched a mental health initiative so that employers and employees know that there's resources available, know that they have rights and responsibilities.
I just recently had a mental health crisis at work. It was very, very stressful. I'm experiencing my own struggles, just very busy, and it was just a really, really hard day in the classroom, and I wasn't gonna make it through the days. I didn't feel comfortable being in the classroom. I felt like my stress was gonna come off on the kids. I was not in a safe space to be helping other people regulate their emotions, and that's my job, is not only to educate but help them regulate themselves. And it didn't feel like a safe place to be able to say, I'm telling you I need a break.
Let's be honest, we at work 8 hours a day. We spend most of our time at work, and then sometimes people work 2 and 3 shifts. don't get to see their families for like 2 and 3 days. It's going to trickle down to your work and your family life.
So we come to the meeting and they inform us that an apprentice, he committed suicide. And I was just like, wow, caught up in the meeting, everything kind of goes over your head. But as I got home that night, I was just thinking like, damn, what was this kid going through that he killed himself? Really, at the end of the day, it's something that they're going through, that's in there, it's their emotions, it's inside of them. And nobody actually cares enough to open up. So yeah, there is a stigma. We have to change the conversation, or how we have to start the conversation. Not change it, we have to start it, because a lot of people don't even have it.
There is a mental health crisis in the U.S., and stigma is a significant contributing factor to that crisis.
Too often we have sort of treated people like they were machines and that they can work 24 hours a day, 7 days an hour, and when they break, then that's a bad thing. And it's okay to acknowledge that stress is a part of the human experience and that we have to be mindful of not blaming people when they have stress-related crises.
We look to employers to set the example, right? To be a model, to demonstrate what is possible in the workplace when you take care of your employees.
It means that people matter, right? Especially small business. It is pretty personal. So I'm very close to the folks who work here, and I think the stigma starts with leadership. So I don't have a stigma, so therefore there is no stigma. I mean, I don't know if I can make it any simpler than that.
Leadership at our workplaces around the country have the ability to make substantive changes. We knew that for over 3 decades that the usage of our proactive mental health benefit that offers our people no-cost counseling sessions, that the usage was very low. Low usage was actually on par. It was similar to other workplaces, and it had been like that for several decades. But since we started our campaign, the usage of our proactive mental health benefit has increased 5 times. It is sustained, and it began to increase for the first time in 30 years, the very same month that we began our initiative in 2016.
As business leaders, I want my best employees to give us their best, and I want them to feel good so that we can do this for a prolonged and sustained period. That's the business case.
I think some of the most important policies are making sure that frontline workers have benefits, having access to sick days, having access to mental health supports, having access to time off, and the ability to communicate the needs, their life outside of work as well as their balance of life in work.
It's a journey for us. We know that we have more work to do. We're continuing to learn and to grow and adapt to our changing world, but what's most important for us is that we want our people, again, to be comfortable bringing their whole selves to work.
Work has always been about more than just wages or health and safety. Those are very important too, but it's also been about a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, a sense of belonging, and mental health is really key to that.
So I hope that video gave you a couple things to also think about, right? Like, what are some other companies doing around this? How do we support this? If you're not communicating the resources you have on hand, your employees are not going to use them. So we'll talk a little bit towards the end of this presentation about other things that we can do. That's why this presentation is called Mental Health in the Workplace and how we can help. So we're going to give you some tools to think about, along with the link that Jen English threw into the chat there with our resources. There is a mental health toolkit directed towards employers on what we can do and understanding some of the different illnesses and disorders that we're seeing come through the workplace, but also a resource from OSHA, because OSHA actually put together a fact sheet on mental health and stress in the workplace and things that we can do. So utilize the resources around you and start clicking on some of those links. Thank you, Jen. She just dropped in the chat again there for you. So I'm going to start with this. If you were with me in January, you've seen this stat here, but I still think that these are really important because I'm a very interactive trainer, so I'm going to ask you all you don't have to use the Q&A for when I ask for answers. You can certainly use the chat here. In 2020, why might people have been super stressed, especially, and this happened in December of 2020? Can we understand why we might have seen an increase in these things that are on the screen? COVID. Thanks, Bob. COVID. And remember December 2020. Do you remember what it was like then? The scariness of everything, the uncertainty of everything, right? We were right in this pandemic. It had only been a few months. We kept thinking maybe we could get out of this. Maybe it would get better. Maybe we would, just see it kind of dissipate, and it didn't. And the reality is it's still here. We're still having COVID spreads and all sorts of things. And we've learned to adapt, but this took a huge toll. This was a collective trauma. And it took a huge toll on people's mental health. And when we look at these stats here, I'm just going to pick out a few. 57% have increased anxiety, 67% experiencing increases in stress, 53% of people are sad, irritable, having trouble concentrating, taking longer to finish tasks, having trouble thinking, right? Read it in the comments here. Pandemic, working at home, making sure ourselves, our coworkers, we kept our jobs, good, kids are home, right? It was one of the most stressful times that I've ever experienced in my lifetime. Why do these things matter to employers? There are some things in the chat. Why would this matter to employers if people are more anxious and not concentrating? Thank you, Alicia. Accidents, low productivity. If you're in an industry where productivity really does matter, you want to make sure that everything is running as efficiently as possible. And if people are having accidents, incidents, forgetting things, not setting up their workstations appropriately, having to, really think about what they're doing before they do it, they slow down. Yeah, the medical centers, 24/7, no downtime, short-staffed, sickness going through, right? All of this stuff. This matters to employees. Absenteeism. They're not being able to come in because they don't feel well, right? In addition to just being sick, right? Thank you, Rita. Again, lack of motivation, additional stress, thinking about how it was handled, if it'll happen again, right? Is this going to come back again? Is there going to be another virus that we're going to have to deal with? Hopefully, we're more prepared now. Every one of you should have a airborne pathogens response plan at this point. School absenteeism, stressed out teachers. Yep. And now we're in September again, right? And we've got teachers going back to school and kids back in school. And we have all of these. It's been years, but we are still in this stressed state, and we're dealing with the aftermath of a pandemic of unprecedented for our generations, right? In 2021, so there was 2020, 2021, we had a National Safety Council, the same conference that Jen just came back from, had a panel of employers that were discussing mental health in the workplace. And Lawrence Perlman of Marsh Risk Consulting was commenting on that study that I was talking about a few slides ago in the beginning here. Studies found, and this was through Marsh's studies, because Marsh Risk is a massive insurer and all over the world. 3% of workers account for 22% of workplace accidents. That is a very small amount of employees that are causing about a quarter of our work comp claims. So what is going on with this small subset of employees that are causing multiple accidents? Because that's what's going on. They're having more than 2 incidents within a policy term. And those accident-prone workers are 50% more likely to suffer from a serious accident than other employees because they're having additional accidents. Either they're already previously injured and then they get hurt again and it makes it worse, or things just start adding up over time. And eventually we're going to have a much larger issue because they keep getting hurt. They're still tired. They're still stressed out. They're still distracted, whatever it is. And they're getting hurt over and over and over again. In insurance, we call it the law of large numbers. You can only do something so many times before something is really going to happen, right? Like a big incident. Studies have shown that being accident prone is usually a temporary condition, and it usually only lasts about 6 to 12 months. And they found, after they did studies into these accidents, they found that these were usually caused by serious problems at home or at work. Some of them were physical conditions, some of them were emotional conditions. We also know within the mental health world that physical conditions can lead to mental health conditions. Social or financial crisis. If you don't have a social support system, a family support system, friends, loved ones that you can that care for you and you care for them, and you have these connections, you also could be struggling with some mental health challenges. Financial crisis, financial stress is one of the biggest causes of stress, especially right now. Or even at this time, distractions caused by pressures in the pandemic were causing these incidents with employees. But I want you to focus on the fact that these were temporary. They were temporary conditions. They were temporary things these employees maybe just needed a little extra support or flexibility during, so that they could address the issues and then come back to work as their best self. When we talk about suicide prevention, we talk about preventing turnover, about increasing productivity, increasing presenteeism and not absenteeism. Supporting them through this short time in their life could actually even speed up the process for them if they know that they have this support system in their employer as well. So one of the takeaways from this was that having a mental health strategy is critical. Does anybody here on this call, do you have a mental health strategy in your workplace currently that you are actively working to promote mental health awareness, support employees through EAP programs? Maybe you have support groups within the employer. Do you have people in recovery that are supporting others? Are you a recovery friendly workplace? You can throw it in the chat. I would just like to see if anybody has current mental health strategies in there. And it's also okay, if you don't, this is why you're here, right? We're learning about these things that we need to put into place. So a mental health strategy is going to include really understanding what the impact of mental health is, so that we can get the stuff into place, so that we can get productivity back on track. We can get absenteeism under control and prevent mental health incidents. 2 EAPs. That's fantastic. Promote the EAP. One of my favorite things, love Jennifer Landon, recovery friendly workplace. Good. I'm glad to see this. Now, EAPs, and I'm going to talk about these as well. My favorite thing when I go into clients is I go into use the restroom and I see the EAP poster on a bathroom stall or on the inside of the bathroom door. Because where do people go to cry at work? I'll tell you, they go to the bathroom, unless you have an absolutely private room that they can book and go in. People cry in the bathroom. Put your EAP posters in the bathroom. Put the mental health talk lines in the bathroom so people can find them. Love that. I'm not sure if it's Shanna or Shauna, but love that you have flyers all over. And the bathrooms, it's that private place. I really think break rooms, employee locker rooms, wherever you can get it in front of them, where they go to spend their time, where they go to take a deep breath, where they go to, separate themselves from what's going on or take a quiet moment. That's where those flyers should be. Occupational Health Science magazine found that sleep is compromised when people feel stressed at work. So sleep is obviously an important thing. It's a whole part of our safety as well, especially if you do things like drive long distances. If you're doing anything that requires concentration, you're going to need your sleep. I see Patricia's question in there. Thank you, Norma. Employee Assistance Program. And I will talk about an EAP a little bit later on as well, Patricia, as to what they can typically do in general. Research at University of Illinois found that when employees receive rude emails at work, they tend to experience negativity and spill over into their personal lives, particularly with their partners. And then Carleton University found that when people experience incivility at work, they tend to feel less capable in their parenting. So when we are stressed at work and we're bickering and arguing with each other or being uncivil to each other, not showing each other a certain level of respect, or, trying to take a deep breath when we feel like we need to be rude. And, we all get there. Sometimes I type out an email and then I read it and I go, nope, Shannon, that was not nice, right? You're feeling stressed right now. You need to take a deep breath. You need to respond to this appropriately. And we have to take understanding that everybody we're interacting with has a whole lot of things going on behind them that we are not aware of, right? That's one of the things we talk about in mental health, is that we really don't know what people are going through. So when we are experiencing these things back and forth, maybe we need to take a step back. Maybe we need to have a conversation in person, right? Maybe I need to pick up the phone and call that person so I can hear the tone instead of read the tone. Because what's happening is people are going home and they're taking out their stresses on their families. And now we're affecting their family life. We're affecting their children. That's our next generation of leadership. We're affecting them. I love that, Bob. Learning to respond, not react. Yes. These actions mirror what groups of students experience. Exactly. And that's the reality. We're all humans. We all just want to be heard. We want to feel understood, right? And a lot of times we want to learn too. I want to learn more about you. I want to learn where you're coming from. I want to learn about if I'm upsetting you, if I'm doing things. And we need to talk about this stuff more. We need to confront things when they're happening, and we need to pick up the phone. We need to connect a little bit more as well on a personal level. I was just at the Vermont SHRM conference of Society for Human Resources Management, and was watching a presentation, and this was one of the slides, and it really stood out to me, and I was like, well, this fits perfectly into some of the things that we're talking about. Harvard Business Review also said 58% of employees, this was a recent Harvard Business Review, 58% of employees trust a stranger more than their boss. And 45% cite lack of trust in leadership as the biggest issue impacting their work.
Hi, my name is Stephen Gauthier, 22 Benning Street.
And then employees in high trust environments are 11 times more innovative, meaning they speak up, they share ideas. There's a whole other course I teach called Developing Psychological Safety in the Workplace, and it absolutely relates into supporting mental health, because when you have psychological safety with your team, they're going to come to you. They're going to talk to you. They're going to tell you what they're struggling with. They're going to tell you their ideas. They're going to share great things. They're going to share hard things. They're going to tell you what's going on in their personal life. And I need to know these things so that if I see somebody struggling, maybe there's something else going on right now where they need a little extra support. Maybe they need a little flexibility to deal with some stuff in their personal life. I'm not going to have that if I don't have trust with my team. My team does not trust me, then they're not going to come to me with this. And I know some of my team is on this call right now. So, and I say this because I take it very seriously. I want them to know that they can always trust and come to me with whatever's going on, so that we can make sure that they can be their best selves for what we need to do here. Yes, we have a job to do, but they're going to be more productive for us and more innovative for us if they have the supports that they need. So having trust, why does this matter in mental health? Because how much trust do you have to share with somebody that perhaps you have a domestic violence situation going on? How much trust do you have to chat with somebody about how you're feeling with a recent, maybe your parents were just diagnosed with an illness or a sibling? We also, I'm getting to the age where I'm taking care of my parents. I'm still taking care of my kids. Who's taking care of me, right? Those adults that are kind of in the middle. Do we know what's going on with them? This absolutely gears into being able to support their mental health. So right now, and this one, I believe these are 2022 numbers. The suicide leading cause of death in the United States fluctuates. I've seen over the last few years between 10 and 12, but it is a leading cause of death in the United States. And about 46% of those who die by suicide also had a known mental health condition. So they definitely do play into each other. And if we know what's going on and we can help support and we know what this person needs, we can definitely create some accommodations and things around it. 1 in 5 Americans are affected by a mental health illness. And I know this stat was it's a few years old. And I honestly think that there's probably more out there right now, even with these temporary conditions that we're seeing, or even if they're minor challenges versus an actual diagnosed illness, they still need support. Less than 50% of those with mental illness receive treatment. And depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. But we've also just had, as I'll show you in this next slide, we've had anxiety is now topping the list of mental health related workplace issues. So mental health care provider ComPsych revealed that anxiety is a top mental health issue impacting workers. Nearly one ComPsych for mental health assistance in 2023 were looking for help with anxiety. When you think about all of the different mental health challenges that are out there, almost a quarter of what people are seeking for right now is anxiety. And there's a lot of anxiety around there, especially when we are dealing with so much stress as well. Furthermore, these findings about anxiety come just weeks after ComPsych revealed that mental health related leaves of absence were rising in the workplace, up 33% in 2023 from 2022. So we're now also seeing more absenteeism because people are feeling too anxious to leave their homes and come to work for many, many reasons, I'm sure. I just saw a question in here from Richard. Do production quotas contribute to poor mental health? And I think that production quotas, depending on how much pressure you're putting on that quota that, yes, that could put additional stress and anxiety on workers. There's everything about your approach in this, but also understanding that, we are just humans, okay? If we're not meeting production quotas, there could be other issues. It might not be push them harder. It might be that we need to look more into maybe our lean manufacturing processes. What are we doing? Are we as productive as we could possibly be with the staff that we have? Are we training properly? Are we looking at areas where we don't have a lot of this stuff in place? How are we setting up our workstations? How are we setting up the warehousing? How is everything as effective as it could be there to increase productivity versus pushing our people? When you have your people working overtime every single week, their bodies are going to slow down. They are going to get injured. They are tired, they're mentally stressed, and their bodies are physically stressed. The production quotas, I do think, can play into this. Although I understand in manufacturing, you got to have some quotas and you're going to have deadlines to meet. We all do. How we approach those, how we step in as supervisors, as managers, and help, as ownership even, and help and listen to our workers as to what they need to be better, that's going to help as well. We had when the 2022 numbers came out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Assistant Secretary Doug Parker made some statements as OSHA typically does. And he pointed out a few things in the data that came out. One of them was that there was a 5.7 increase in fatal occupational injuries, which means, we're seeing an increase in injuries now. We are getting up into higher numbers than I've seen since I became a safety professional over a decade ago. It's increasing. It's also a disparity. We're seeing disparities in Black and Hispanic workers, which is not part of the mental health thing here. That's a whole other subject, but we have to keep that in mind because also racism, discrimination, prejudice, it also plays into the impact of mental health of our workers. We have to make sure these, diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging, making sure that people actually feel like they belong in the workplace, making sure people are getting adequate training, the same information being treated fairly is really important. The mental health part of this, they found that work-related overdoses and suicides continued to be cause of great concern. And so OSHA is still effectively moving forward with supporting these resources and helping employers understand what our responsibilities should be around this with employers. So I just wanted to point out I don't know if anybody I use the BLS data all the time. And because I think it's really effective to see these things in graph form like this. So in 2022, we had 5,486 fatalities total. And when you look at our top causes here in this graph, it's pretty clear. Violence and exposure to harmful substances, which is where overdoses go, are right up there, and they are every single year. If I go in and I click into the violence category, you have to click down a couple levels to get to the intentional injury by person. But this is a very sobering number, 267 suicides at work in 2022, which means people are choosing to die by suicide at work. And do employers have plans in place for this? Do you have a hazard analysis where you've gone through and you understand where fatalities might happen? We have a piece of equipment. This could hurt you. We have forklifts. These could really seriously hurt you. Do we have a strategy and plan to address when we think somebody might be feeling suicidal? A lot of my employers do not. We have the EAP programs. We have maybe workshops that people are taking, but are we training our supervisors, our other frontline workers to recognize signs in each other and how to approach that? Because that's what's going to be the most effective. If I look at this, in 2021, we had 236 suicides at work. In 2020, we had 259. In 2019, it was a historic high of 307. This is where I really started paying attention when I saw that number and said, wow, we really need to be doing more. That's when I became a mental health first aid trainer with 2019, the very end of 2019. And then the pandemic hit. So in any numbers since the pandemic, we know that there's going to be a little bit of a disparity, right? A skew in the numbers because a lot of people were working from home in 2020. But we saw it start to creep back up again. I don't want to see this go back up to our historic high. And I do know as a mental health first aid trainer that suicide is preventable. We can't prevent everything from happening, but there are many situations where if we pay attention early on, we might be able to prevent a suicide later on. And then we get into the exposure to harmful substances. This always blows my OSHA classes away when we get into this, because most people think this is going to be, inhaling a chemical or something, toxic. Oops, I mixed chemicals and I inhaled it, and that's exposure to a harmful substance. But the majority of these incidents are non-medical use of drugs or alcohol and unintentional overdose. And that is also another mental health condition that we have to look at and support. One of my favorite programs, Recovery Places, recovery friendly workplaces in New Hampshire, is a great resource if you're looking to better support your employees through recovery. And remember that it doesn't just have to be through substance use. Because my friend Jennifer Landon is on here as well. This could be things like grief in the workplace. This could be a traumatic situation that they went through, and it's going to take some time for them to recover and get back into the workplace. So going through a program to become a recovery-friendly workplace can absolutely support a lot of different mental health challenges within the workforce, and help you better support your employees. And go to OSHA's website, because OSHA has a whole list of resources for you, helping you understand the problem, guidance and tips, other resources, links to the CDC, links to the to all of our different associations that look at suicide prevention, stress relief. How do we help our employees through these emotions so that they can come back and be their best selves? But forcing them back to work, one of the things we talk about all the time is like your bereavement policy. How long do you give somebody if they lose a spouse to be out of work? Most of our bereavement policies are going to be 3 days, and then after that you have to use your vacation time, you have to use sick time. But 3 days is not enough to heal from you losing a spouse or losing a child or losing a parent. Some states are even requiring bereavement policies for losing a pet, because our pets are so close. I say that my poodle is over here sound asleep with her little lamb chop, and it hurts my chest to think that someday she's not going to be with me. Thank you, Norma. Crime victims leave. What happens if I experience a traumatic event outside of work and I need some time to come back in because I need to deal with what happened to me? How are we supporting employees through this? And do you have trust enough for employees to be honest with you and to be able to share some of their most important and tough things to talk about? Do you have a place that they can go to? Some current stressors that we're dealing with. We're still seeing mental health decline in the workplace. A lot of it is, again, anxiety. A lot of it is coming through because we don't have psychological safety in place. So people don't feel like they can talk to their employers about what's going on. So instead, they're going to try to push through, or they're going to call out a lot. And either way, we start to see some employment issues, right? Like, hey, you're late all the time, or hey, you've been calling out a lot. Instead of going, hey, you're late all the time. What is going on with you? You're going to be in trouble. You've got to show up. You've got to be here. You've got a job to do. Could I say instead, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? You've been showing up a lot lately. I could say that better. You've been showing up late recently. That's not like you. Or it's starting to affect your work performance. Is there something going on? Is everything okay? What's keeping you from getting here on time? I talked about this with a construction supervisor, and I said, why don't you ask them what's going on rather than you're late, you're in trouble again. Now you go and get the worst job on the site that day because I'm angry with you. And this was a real thing that was happening. Why don't you ask? And one of the other supervisors in that class said, I did that. I asked. This guy was late. He kept showing up late every day. It was like 15 to 20 minutes. It was making everybody mad. So I asked him what was going on. He was caring for his disabled mother. They lost their trusted CNA that would show up and help him so that he could get to work on time. So he was trying to coordinate care, figure out how to get a new CNA in there that he could trust to take care of his mother, make sure his mother was taken care of before he got there. And he was too afraid to say anything to anybody about what was going on because he didn't think people would understand. It could be something as basic as that. They shifted his schedule. So he came in half an hour later than everybody else, and he stayed half an hour later than everybody else. And it's actually benefited them over the long term to have that different shift in times and people coming on and off site. So it ultimately worked out for the whole company, and this employee felt less stressed and supported through all of this. Little things like that. Ask the question, what's going on? Many workers surveyed recently expressed a preference to work for an organization that values their emotions and psychological well-being, and that psychologically, a healthy workplace is critical for overall population health in the workplace. So we also have 80% of Americans that are considering their job stressful. 46 of those employees reported that their workload was the biggest cause of the workplace stress. So when we talk about production quotas, it might be that. It might be that there's not enough support in place. It might be that we don't have the best processes in place, so I can't be as efficient as possible. How do we get there? We got to talk. We got to talk to our workers. We got to talk to the front line. You have to take their input as well and come up with the best plan. 1 in 4 employees view their jobs as their top stressor in their life. I have a lot of stresses in my life. My job is stressful, but not because of my employer. My job is stressful because of what we do. And work comp claims, right? Like I get to hear about injuries and fatalities and all sorts of stuff. That's stressful. Not stressful though, because my boss is making it that way or making it an awful place for me to be, or my coworkers. I love coming to work and doing my job, even though it is stressful. There's other things in my life that are stressful for me, more so than my employer. And I believe that is how it should be. We see our coworkers more than their families do. And they spend the majority of their waking hours with us. We have a responsibility to make those productive, effective, positive hours. Some signs of burnout, and maybe you're seeing these. Maybe you're seeing an increase in absences. Maybe you're seeing somebody that's not as engaged as they used to be. Maybe they're showing exhaustion. Maybe they're falling asleep in the break room or taking naps on the times that they do get to take breaks. There's increase in mistakes or accidents or near misses, things that are almost hurting somebody, but they didn't. Maybe we, broke some equipment. Maybe we lost a little bit of product, but we didn't get a human hurt. Maybe we're seeing more withdrawal or isolation. They're not showing up as often. They're not coming out to networking functions. They're not coming to coffee break. They're taking time away from themselves. They're going for a lot of mental health walks. Higher sensitivity. Maybe people are exploding over small things. What I have learned in time, and kind of like what Bob was seeing there, was people explode over the small things that the straw that broke the camel's back, because there was a bunch of other things that have either happened that day, that week, that month to them that had nothing to do with us. But in this moment, because maybe I wasn't being sensitive or I was being a little bit rude, I'm the one who caused that explosion because they just had enough. How do we get around this? How do we learn how to communicate that? Thank you, Rita. Getting care for our elderly shifted too after the pandemic. It's really difficult to find medical care because they're all burnt out. Yeah, I absolutely. CNAs, and then to find somebody that you trust to leave with your family member, right, who is at risk themselves. That is very stressful. In addition, we've got financial stress going on. We've got Americans who are looking at, do I buy groceries? Do I buy gas? Do I pay my rent? And these are people who it used to be, people just living above the poverty line. We are looking at people families of 4 who make over, 6 figures together are living paycheck to paycheck right now. People are trying to figure out how to get to work, how to put food on the table, which also could lead to bigger things. Why would people struggling to get gas or groceries affect an employer? Do another drop in the chat. Why do you think groceries and gas for your employees matter? No one? Thank you, Monica. They're a staple to everything. We've got to take care of the basics. Maslow's well-being. Thank you. I was waiting for somebody to put the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy in there. The ability to eat. How important is that for us to fuel our bodies if you work in a very physical job or even a mental job, right? Your brain runs off of sugars and carbs and all of these vitamins and electrolytes that we need. We need to be able to eat, right? We need to be able to put gas in my vehicle to get to you. so that I can go do my job. And if I'm struggling and choosing, I might call out of work because I don't have the gas to get there. And I don't want to tell you that. Can you imagine how embarrassing it would be for somebody, right? Unless there was a true base of psychological safety, if you knew there was no stigmas here, you knew I was not going to judge you for not being able to put gas in your car. What are you doing with all your money? What are you doing here? What are you doing? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which is literally impossible. It's not the reactions that we need to be having. What we have to realize is that this is a reality for a lot of people that you might not expect are struggling with these things right now. If they're not eating, if they're not able to get to work, we're going to have bigger issues on our hands. American Psychiatric Associations did these monthly polls. This one was last year around the fall time, and they found that 90% of residents in the United States report feeling anxious or are very anxious about inflation. And we're still seeing that. Thank Richard. So employers need to pay more. Sometimes, it could be a pay disparity. It could also be, there's other issues. I always call this like it's a bicycle spoke and we're all in the center, right? Whatever the issue is, it's the center, and whatever's driving those things and holding that center together is a bunch of different spokes. And when one bends, more bent, and then our wheel gets all wobbly and the wheel's going to fall off. The reality is salaries do need to be looked at. Inflation also needs to be looked at, right? There needs to be some collaboration here and making sure that we're supporting everybody as a whole. But we're in a very tough spot right now. And we're in an election year as well, which causes stress for people additionally, right? All of this stress could lead to heart disease, could lead to high blood pressure, insomnia, more frequent colds and minor illnesses. Why would this matter to employers? What if employees are getting sick more? Why does that matter to you as an employer? They call out of work, increased downtime, absenteeism, productivity, health costs. Your health insurance, the more people are getting sick and using their health insurance, your rates are going to go up. If they're having heart disease, they have to be put on medications, your health insurance premiums are going to go up that next year. Surgeries, health insurance premium is going to go up next year. Same thing with your workers' comp. So I call out, everybody else gets increased overtime. Now we're starting to see more strains, sprains, shoulder injuries, wrists, knees, hips, right? Those expensive things to cover. Medical costs are up with inflation as well, which means premiums in workers' comp, although New Hampshire just had a big decrease statewide for their work comp. So well done, New Hampshire. But we're going to start to see these things increase, and the carriers seek it through the premium to the employers, which puts the more stress on the employer's pocketbook. So we look at increased salaries and things. I need more salary. Well, we're paying more out in healthcare premiums and things. It's a vicious circle that we're in right now. It's very stressful. Rehiring, training, lost production. Thank you, Stephen. This all matters. And people often cope with stress in unhealthy ways as well. Smoking, vaping, chewing, drinking, substance use issues, self-medicating. Some people overeat, some people undereat, right? Which is all going to decrease overall health. And again, why would this matter to employers? You're following your costs. You want to keep your employees as healthy as possible. One of the things that I think every employer should have in place, or at least be looking at along with our safety, is a wellness organization, right? Working with somebody who can help support the wellness and the healthy activities, because those things can help increase self-care as well, which will help us better understand finances. I just went through our own wellness committee to get some points in my wellness portal because I get cash money for those points at the end of the year. I did a financial wellness work challenge, I guess it was, for like 6 weeks. Every day I had something to do around financial wellness, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about my own spending habits and things that actually worked. I've saved some money this past month. So that's incredible, right? And it's like, oh, I feel like I have a little bit better control and better understanding of this. That's a little bit less stress in my life because I've gotten some education around something that was starting to get really stressful. So like, what are other areas that I can help reduce these things? So when anxiety takes a toll on your physical health, that again, it leads to these increased medical bills. And then we're starting to see it even more so. In 2021, I had an issue with one of my manufacturers. We go through their work comp claims on a quarterly basis, and what we noticed at the end of the year is that we had one employee that got hurt multiple times. All 4 of these claims were from the same employee. This facility, we rarely had work comp claims. When we did, they were very small, very medical only, small things. Very rarely did we have lost time. This employee had never been injured before, and the first 3 claims were minor, but the last one actually ended up in lost time and some medical care, which meant it was a larger claim. It ended up going into the 5 figures versus being a few $100s for a quick checkup. So we talked with the supervisor and found out through the supervisor that they had also noticed the employee had seemed off, and that they had had a couple other minor things that weren't even reported, and they had found them sleeping in the break room at one point. So we knew something. Sorry, Denise, it wasn't the 21st of the month. It was January 2021, July 2021. Now that would have also been a red flag to me. Oh, I apologize. My dog is barking. So something's going on with this employee though, right? So it's good to go check in with the supervisor, because who sees that employee most often? Their supervisor. So it's like, well, okay, there's been some other issues going on here. So we went in and brought the employee in, and we went over these claims. Like, what's going on? This isn't your norm. You're getting hurt a lot. What's happening right now? He was the only employee that had multiple claims that year. During the conversation, found out the employee's spouse had to leave their job to stay home during the pandemic. They were working with the kids with remote schoolwork. This employee picked up a second job to make up for lost income. They were working 7 days a week, 5 of which were at both jobs. The employee worked second shift at this employer. Can you see why this employee may have been getting hurt more often suddenly? What stands out about this? We'd put on our detective hats and look at the facts. How do you think this employee was feeling at the time? Overworked, tired, exhausted, fatigued. He's exhausted, and probably mentally exhausted too. And his spouse was probably exhausted and stressed, worried financially. Yeah, stressed to the max, stressed out. All his family was riding on his shoulders, right? That's a lot of stress. I don't disagree with you, Peter. I wish I had an answer for all of this stuff too, because it is, and I work with employers and I work with frontline workers, and I hear both sides of it, and it's not an easy issue, especially small employers. Small employers are not making a lot of profit, right? And they're investing into their businesses. And I know one of my Masons, his highest paid employees make more than he does as the owner, because he invests in his employees, which is important. Stigma, shame. Yes, and I agree. Also, Peter, thank you for sharing that. Many times I'm not exhausted from a physical work, but the mental. That was just a really rough conversation. That was a really, I had to put a lot of thought into this, and I'm tired. And COVID was also causing cognitive stress as well, right? And cognitive exhaustion. So being mentally exhausted very easily with long COVID even symptoms. So there's a lot that is playing into this. And all of it, if it's ending up in work comp claims, it's going to affect your mod rate, which means it's affecting your bottom line financially. So what can we do? Because again, we need some fixes for this. What can we do in the meantime? Oops, sorry, I did not need to do that. Hierarchy of controls. Anybody in the safety world, this should definitely be in your toolbox of having the hierarchy. I teach this all the time. This is actually, it is so ingrained in me, this process, that this is how I make decisions on a day. Is this going to be safe for me? Are there hazards involved in this? How do I eliminate hazards? How do I make this, work for me? How do I set this up? How is this going to be the most efficient, the most productive? I use this all the time. They adapted this to the mental well-being of employees. Eliminate threats to psychological safety. I've already mentioned this, right? And this was already our plan. And then I found this and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Absolutely. Psychological safety absolutely is the base for every employer. If you do not have this, you will not know what's going on with your employees. You will not know what's going on with your systems, your productivity, any issues within it, because they're not going to tell you because they don't trust you. Have that as your base. Substitute mental health promotion, protective features. Protective factors are counteractive to risk factors. Putting protections in place for employees, giving them the resources, allowing them to speak, allowing them to share is a protective factor against the risk factors for mental health challenges, crisis like suicide, substance use. Educate workers on mental health and suicide prevention. Don't be afraid to talk about it. We have to talk about it. And encourage personal resilience and recovery. Because here's the thing. I cannot force you into therapy. I cannot force you if you need mental health medications. I cannot force you to go seek grief counseling. But I can suggest it, highly recommend it, and present resources to you. And then allow the time, flexibility, space to get it done as an employer. And if you are subject to FMLA laws, you also need to, mental health is protected under FMLA for diagnosed conditions. So we need to make sure that we're following those things as well. So there are also legal obligations for employers of certain sizes and depending on what state you're in. Return to work programs. So we have return to work programs. Usually when I'm talking about this, it's in relation to a workers' comp issue, or maybe somebody got injured outside of work and we're trying to find them light duty or get them back in. But what about transitioning back with employee mental health? So one of the things, if you're in Vermont, we have the Retain program, which I highly, highly recommend utilize. It's a grant-funded program. If we don't use it, it's definitely going to go away. So please try to use it. Retain has counselors on the line that employees can call and have an advocate on their side during the recovery process from a work comp claim or outside injury and getting back into work. Maybe they've been out of work for a long time and recovering and they're looking at getting back in the workforce. Retain is a fantastic program to help support mental health and help employees navigate a system that can cause additional mental health stresses. So think about what are ways that we can reach out and connect with employees when they're out of work, when they're sitting at home, when they're feeling like they're failures or feeling like they let their coworkers down. What can we do to help support them during that time? And if you don't have a program like Retain, just reaching out every now and then, not to be like, hey, when are you going to be back? But like, hey, how you doing? Do you need anything? Hey, we shared this newsletter, and I just wanted to make sure that you saw it so that you could see, some of the happenings going on. Hey, if you feel up to it, we're having a luncheon. Could you come in and have some pizza with us? Make sure they still feel connected. As a manager, what can I do? As a manager, I can offer assistance and accommodations. As a manager, I can very swiftly also recommend that they go and they talk to our HR representatives so that they can get the resources they need. As a coworker, I can listen and be a source of support to my colleagues. As a person with a mental health condition, I can ask for what I need to perform my best. I have anxiety. I have panic disorder. I have something called adjustment disorder. When big changes come my way unexpectedly, my body has a physical reaction that turns into a panic attack. It's because of my past traumas. You ever want to get coffee and talk about past traumas? I'm your girl. I need to ask and let people know what I need to help support me through this when times get tough. That's hard to do. I do have a boss that I can turn to and say this. I have a team that I can turn to and say, hey, I'm not the best leader today because this is going on for me. And I get that support. We've built that trust with each other because we've built these things. I can offer assistance. I can be a good listener. Here's my Retain program. Preventing work disability, supporting health and workability for people who live and work in Vermont. So this is, if you want to take a quick screenshot, although my slides are going to be available. So all of this information will be available in the PDF of the slides. Reach out to them, see what they can help you with as an employer. Even especially if you have, some active work comp claims and people out right now. An employee assistance program. So employee assistance can cover a lot of different areas, and you can really build your program for your employees. And there's different levels, and every employee assistance program is a little bit different in what they offer and what they can do. There's some really great ones out there. They can help with substance use. They can help with stress management. They can help with financial counseling. They can help people put wills in place even for thinking about planning, for when I'm gone. That's a stress for me right now too. Thinking about like, oh, what if something happens to me? What if my kids aren't taken care of? I need to make sure things are in place. That's a stress as well that can be added onto people. EAPs can come in and do education and awareness trainings with your employees and your supervisors. They offer counseling services. You usually get a few free counseling services with a therapist or a counselor so you can talk about what's going on, and they can help give guidance, or they can help recommend further care through their health insurance plan and things. Peter, the Vermont Department of Labor right here, Labor for the Retain program is right there. Give you a quick second. I'm going to move on. Flexible workplace. Not everybody can have flexible workplace, but like I mentioned before, my construction crew found a way to have a flexible workplace with hours and working out schedules that make sense for them. We have to put in a little effort. We have to think outside the box. We have to think about, like, just because we did it this way for the last 30 years does not mean that that's the way that we have to continue. How could you be more flexible? Are there positions that could be more flexible in the workplace? Maybe not every position can have flexible timing. Some do. Some are project-based. Like my job, totally project-based job. I have a lot of flexibility in what I do, and I make my own schedule. That's not a reality for everybody, I understand, but there are some positions that we might be able to do that. Could we temporarily give some part-time employment? Could we temporarily reduce working hours? Or maybe they need to be reduced permanently to this person's new disability or something that's going on. Again, flexible scheduling, telecommuting, which is remote work, compressed work weeks. Some employers are looking at putting in, 4-hour work weeks and offering three-day weekends. There's a lot of testing going on around that as well. A phased return to work from leave. So maybe they come on just a few hours to get back into it, get integrated again, and then they increase those over time. Job sharing. So making sure job sharing is also like cross training, making sure that people can step in and help, and people know what others do, and I can help here, and I know where to find this, and I can run that, so that we can have support systems in place. This is also job sharing, and job rotation is really good on your body for ergonomics and things. Could we reduce hours in the summer to take less stress off of people and allow them to spend more time with their families in time where we have more daylight? Welcome to New England, where we're about to get into 4 o'clock darkness, which is also a whole other thing when we talk about like seasonal depression, right? And working into those times when I said at the very beginning today that we were going to, we're moving into a time of the holidays and seasonal depression and long or short days, long nights, and it really does affect people. Retirement, maybe phasing retirement in so that people are gradually decreasing their number of hours. I've seen a lot of stress come around people who are looking to retire. We say this as Galen is very excited to retire and counting down his days. And some people are. Other people, it's a very stressful time for them. So what might work for them there? Virtual work, like remote work, hoteling. This is something the Richards Group, we do quite well. Every office space that we have has hotel spaces that we can book through a calendar invite. And then you can book a space in any one of our offices to go work if you want to be in person and present with more people. Some employers also create a workplace that's entirely flexible. There's no defined work schedule. That's like what my job is. In even my team, we have flexible work time. We are project based. As long as you're getting back to clients, you're answering them, and our projects are getting done on time. If you want to work at 1 a.m. because that works for you, you're going to work at 1 a.m. But that's not working for me. But if that's what works for you for right now, great. We just need to make sure that our projects are done on time. What about something like a minimum vacation time, requiring employees to take a week off, making sure that they actually take their vacation time and enjoy their vacation time. Now, to do that, we also have to have support in place for them while they're away on vacation, right? I have a team email. So if you can't get me, if you get my out of office, you can email my team. Some workers who like 12-hour shifts, like in a hospital, and then they have more days off, love that. We do 4 10-hour days sometimes in construction. Yeah. What can we do? And are people willing to work those hours because they'd rather have an extra day off? Can we work those schedules in? A lot of employers do it that way as well. Self-care. We have to allow time for self-care for ourselves and as employers, right? So allowing space like to make mistakes, that's another psychological safety tactic. Allowing it's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. We need to be honest and hold ourselves accountable for those things. We need to ask for what we need. We need to set boundaries. We need to be able to say no in some circumstances. This came in my kids' school newsletter, Green Wave, Greenfield, Mass, go Green Wave. It was at the top of the newsletter, and I was like, oh, I just love this so much. And I'm going to put it into my presentations. I'm going to give the school credit here, our superintendent. People do not experience your intentions. They experience your behavior. We can come forward with the best intentions, and our approach could just be the most off-putting thing. We need to correct our behaviors and our approaches. People don't understand what your intentions are all the time, especially when we're coming across as stressed, as rude, as uncivil, even though we might have good intentions, or even when we're looking to try to help, we might ask the wrong things or say the wrong things. So develop psychological safety. When I teach a workshop around this, but this is where this workshop came from, was this book right here. So if you don't know Dr. Amy Edmondson, she is through Harvard Business School and has written many books at this point. But this book right here, if you want to start the basis of psychological safety, read The Fearless Organization. I cannot stress it enough. I have a copy on my nightstand. And it's a really good place to start to get more into what psychological safety is. In this book, she defines psychological safety as the belief that the work environment is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. Psychological safety exists when people feel their workplace is a safe environment where they can speak up, offer ideas, and ask questions without fear of being punished or embarrassed. And we're coming up here, I'm past 10. Mental health first aid. And I saw a comment earlier, you'd like to learn more about the mental health first aid. I'm going to put my email up at the end, so you can certainly reach out to me if you would like to learn more about this class and what it takes to make one happen. Absolutely glad to have that conversation with you. Mental health first aid is the initial help offered to a person developing a mental health or substance use challenge or experiencing a mental health crisis. It's first aid given until appropriate treatment and support are received until the crisis resolved. It is a full day class. Some instructors break them up into 2 half days. It's a long class, it's a long day, and we talk about everything. We learn about risk factors and warning signs. We look at early signs and symptoms, worsening signs and symptoms, and then when are people in crisis? When do we need our numbers? Risk factors are really important to understand. What are the warning signs? Information, how to better understand these disorders that are showing up in the workplace. And it even gives you an action plan. So if you've ever taken a first aid or a CPR class, you probably got the ABCs or the ABCH, right? Airway, breathing, pulse, and bleeding. Those are the big buckets that we look for. And then how do we approach? We check the scene for safety. We check the victim. We check them over. We look for all these things. We listen to see if they're breathing. We call 911. We have a plan. Well, guess what? Mental health first aid also puts a plan in place. This is how to assess. This is how to offer reassurance. This is how to talk to somebody. This is how to listen non-judgmentally. It's called the ALGE plan. Post the numbers, post your posters, put them in places where people go to get some quiet time or to get a little privacy so that they can see that they have these resources available to them. Talk about this. Please email me if you want to talk more about this as well. And I see one question that popped in there, lots of great comments in there. Thank you, Peter. Thank you all for being super interactive with me as well. It's the best part as a trainer is to have people actually interact with your information and resources. I do just want to answer Richard's question here. Could workers' compensation cover mental health problems caused by a workplace environment? And the answer, Richard, is yes, and maybe. I'm going to stop sharing here for a second. So in certain professions, absolutely, workers' comp will cover mental health conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder. We see that a lot in our emergency responders, EMTs, police, firefighters. Workers' comp will definitely cover those things. But I also just had an incident that happened at a grocery store where somebody was self-harming in the bathroom. And went a little too far with it, unfortunately, and workers had to respond to that medical emergency. And there was a lot of stress and trauma around that. And there was workers' comp coverage actually for the employees that first responded to cover some time loss and some therapy sessions after the fact. So there was some coverage that was put in place for some of these workers.